may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys, like we were talking about in the video yesterday, we are closing in on the NFL draft. It is right here. So please, if you have not already, you need to go down there. You need to subscribe to the channel, but more importantly, hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button, because I am going to be nonstop giving y'all my instant reactions from the NFL draft. I'm going to be coming on talking about dynasty and 2021 fantasy implications. So please make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have that bell hit next to it. That way we can continuously update these rookie rankings. That way we can continuously update what we think about these players. But if you want to have access to my most in-depth thoughts, the actual research going behind this, make sure y'all head over to Patreon, where of course we are always going to have our rookie rankings posted, but as well for everybody joining the flock on Patreon, that is where you're going to exclusively find our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, which should be anywhere from 60 to 100 pages when it's all said and done. We've been working on it nonstop for over a month now, and I am so excited to get these landing spots. That way we can finalize it up with how these rookies are going to be fitting in their offenses, where you should be valuing them for fantasy in 2021, but more importantly, for your Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues. But yeah, that's all I got for y'all. What we are going to be doing now is we are going to be continuing breaking down our current wide receiver rookie rankings. Now, the reason we broke this up into two videos, because I'm wanting to go deep. I'm wanting to make sure we're spending adequate time on every one of these players. But just in case you were unable to watch the last video, let me recap our top 5. And we are also breaking them down into tiers, but I'll give y'all 1 second in case y'all don't want this recap, in case you want to go actually watch the other video where we break these players down in depth, which we're not going to be doing right now. I'll let you pause it, and then you can go find that other video on our homepage. But yeah, okay, that should have been enough time for that. You should have been able to do that by now. Okay, let's go through this. Okay, at the lone spot in tier 1, we are going to have our wide receiver 1 in Ja'Marr Chase. Then you go down to tier 2, leading us off with Devonta Smith at number 2 overall. Then you have Jalen Waddle, then Rondale Moore, and lastly, Elijah Moore for our top 5 rookie wide receivers. Now, diving a little bit deeper here, let's break down the next 5. Let's go through all the way through our top 10 rookie wide receivers. And coming in at number 6, we are going to have someone that checks almost every single box. This is going to be Rashad Bateman. Now, Bateman has the size. Bateman also has the breakout age that we've talked about being so important, and he has production with context. Okay, so I understand that we have kind of made fun of the Rashad Bateman truthers. We kind of have made fun of the fact that people are having Rashad Bateman ranked over Devonta Smith in some cases, and we're looking at that scenario going, yeah, I understand why you're doing it, but you're just giving Rashad Bateman way too much credit, and you're not looking at Devonta Smith's production with context. But here, Rashad Bateman's a great wide receiver prospect. We're not trying to take anything away from Rashad Bateman in his own right. Just what we have a problem with is whenever he's being ranked as the second wide receiver in this class, sometimes you're actually seeing him up there in the same tier as Ja'Marr Chase, which simply can't be the case. But no, Rashad Bateman has not great size. I know we called him good sized, but that's mainly compared to the other wide receivers in this draft class. That's mainly compared to the Elijah Moore, the Rondale Moore, as well as the Devonta Smith, just because this wide receiver class is loaded up with small players. But anyway, he did get on the field his true freshman season, and he was able to produce. And this was alongside Tyler Johnson, a wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. And you can sit here and you can argue how good Tyler Johnson actually is, but the fact that he was able to get on an NFL roster and the fact that he was able to produce whenever he got opportunity, that should tell us that, hey, Rashad Bateman can go up and he can be a quality NFL wide receiver at the very minimum. Now, he was never able to outproduce Tyler Johnson in either his true freshman or true sophomore year. Now, this is something I want to focus in on, because some people are going to look at the scenario and they're going to go, you know what? Rashad Bateman came pretty close to Tyler Johnson in his true sophomore season, and Tyler Johnson was a senior at the time. So what kind of value are you going to be putting into that? What kind of value are you going to be giving Rashad Bateman based on the fact that at 19 years old, he was about as good as Tyler Johnson when Tyler Johnson was 21 years old? Now, personally, I don't think it's that impressive. I think that we would be a lot more impressed with the fact that a wide receiver like Devonta Smith was able to outproduce Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, and Jalen Waddle all while they were the same age. But in the case of Rashad Bateman, at the very least, it's a positive indicator. It's definitely not negative. So we can say that, even if some other people want to give him way more credit, in my opinion. But yeah, Rashad Bateman checks every single box. There are no major concerns with him. Just if you're going to be playing in a school that isn't the biggest, it's not in the SEC, you're not going to be playing against that top competition. I would have liked to see Rashad Bateman be able to command 36, 37, 38% of his team's offense his last season, but obviously it gets COVID. Obviously it's a weird year. So Rashad Bateman checks all the boxes. Not too low on him, but I just don't like where some other people have him ranked personally. Okay, so now let's get to our last wide receiver in this tier 2 rankings. Let's go over to really the only wide receiver in this draft class that has great size. This is going to be Terrace Marshall. So at wide receiver 7, Terrace Marshall looks like a guy that has a high ceiling. That is 100% true. I mean, Terrace Marshall can easily have the highest ceiling out of any of these wide receivers in this tier 2. And that's why we are putting all these guys in the same tier. Because if you look at the landing spots, say Terrace Marshall goes to the Kansas City Chiefs at the end of round 1, then you have Devontae Smith going to the Philadelphia Eagles at the pick 12 overall. At that point, you're sitting here going, okay, who do we really want? Do we want Terrace Marshall when he checks that first round draft capital box and he's in a much better situation? Or do we want Devontae Smith where, yeah, maybe he got a little bit more NFL draft capital. Maybe we liked his profile a little bit more coming in, but he's in a way worse situation. That's why I want to break down the tiers like this, because this is where you have the conversation. Terrace Marshall has it in his range of outcomes to be the wide receiver 2 in this draft class. Now, he has great size, and with Terrace Marshall, another polarizing player just because he played in that LSU offense. So his true freshman season, really, he had no shot to produce. And then he goes into 2019, his true sophomore year, and he's playing in an offense with Justin Jefferson. He's playing in an offense with Jamar Chase, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and obviously this offense was historic with the amount of production that they were able to accrue with Joe Burrow under center. But still, I mean, what kind of chance does Terrace Marshall really have to be able to go out there and command a significantly high percentage of his team's overall offense? It's almost impossible when you're playing with Jamar Chase, when you're playing with Justin Jefferson. Yet he was still pretty impressive considering all of those things going into it in 2019, his true sophomore year, where technically he didn't break out. But you could say, hey, if he went to Oregon, if he went to Oklahoma State, maybe it would have been the case that he did break out his true freshman year. So this is kind of like what we saw with Calvin Ridley when Calvin Ridley came out as a prospect, where Calvin Ridley had that late breakout age. But in the case of Calvin Ridley, it was a little bit different, where he didn't get to Alabama until he was 20 years old. He stayed in high school for whatever reason a little bit longer. So the breakout age wasn't great, but really he didn't have an option to make it great. And I think you can make the argument for the same thing here with Terrace Marshall. Maybe it doesn't have that much ground to stand on because he was playing college football, but still it's important to understand the context that he was in. And what's even more important to understand is that as soon as he gets opportunity in 2020, as soon as Jefferson goes to the NFL and you have Jamar Chase opting out, Terrace Marshall comes in and he puts up numbers. Terrace Marshall is the clear wide receiver 1 for LSU, and he does this at a good age, and he does this in his true junior season. That's something you like to see. Now throw in the fact that he has that large frame and he is one of the more athletic wide receivers in this draft class. So Terrace Marshall, you can see it in the range of outcomes for him to be the wide receiver 2 overall. I mean, that can happen, which is why he is in tier 2, because you're not going to be surprised about any of these guys. I mean, Rashad Bateman, Terrace Marshall, Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, if any of them finish as wide receiver 2 when it's all said and done, you can't really argue with it too much. You're not saying, okay, that came out of completely left field. That player wasn't even on the radar. No, I think you can paint a picture where, hey, if Terrace Marshall finishes the wide receiver 2 after 2021, I mean, nobody's going to be too surprised. Okay, now let's drop down in a tier. Let's go down to tier 3. These players, I don't think you can have really any argument to put up in tier 2 with those other guys. And our first player in tier 3 is going to be a guy from the Big 12, a guy that I've seen play live before. It's going to be Tylan Wallace. Now, in the case of Tylan Wallace, the first thing you notice is the fact that he's coming out after 4 years. So you don't like to see his age. And generally, if you're coming from a school like Oklahoma State, you better be coming out after 3 seasons. You better have that early breakout age. You better be an early declare, and you better have a great production profile. But here with Tylan Wallace, he doesn't have that, but he also did tear his ACL in college, and people were excited about him. I mean, especially in Devy leagues, a lot of people, including people in the original Flock Devy League, they were already rostering Tylan Wallace in 2019. Now, that is a good sign that he has been on the radar since then. It's a good sign that he was productive at an early age. He has the size to go along with it. But simply, he wasn't productive enough to just completely overlook the injury and the fact that he stayed all 4 years at Oklahoma State. And it's not like Oklahoma State has a ton of competition for targets either. I mean, I know that they have some appealing prospects on the roster. You look at a player like James Washington, who came out of there back in the 2018 class, I believe. James Washington was actually able to win the Biletnikoff, and he was able to dominate in that same Oklahoma State offense. Now, please let me know what y'all think with Tylan Wallace. Let me know if y'all think I am overlooking anything here. I understand that they have some great wide receiver prospects coming up at the same time, but Tylan Wallace was 21 years old, so you would expect dominance regardless of whoever else was on the roster. Okay, so now let's get to someone that really checks none of the metric boxes, really someone that's off the dynasty radar compared to where his real-life NFL value looks like it's shaping up to be, and this is going to be Kadarius Toney. Okay, so if you've been listening to Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast, if y'all been following anything fantasy football related this offseason, really Kadarius Toney is not a name that you've heard brought up that much. I mean, if you hear Kadarius Toney, you would naturally assume, okay, it's going to be a late second round Dynasty rookie pick. It's not going to be someone making an impact in year one, where no, that is simply not the case, because Kadarius Toney, if you talk about real life NFL circles, people are mocking him consistently to go at the back half of round one. Now, while I don't understand it because he wasn't particularly productive, I mean, he wasn't even productive at an early age. I mean, he doesn't have the breakout age. He doesn't have the production in general. That's not going to be something that looks like it's going to translate to NFL production. But you can make the argument that, hey, he played with a very good prospect in Kyle Pitts. And you throw in the fact that he is highly athletic and he's very versatile. So with Kadarius Toney, it's one of these wide receivers that it looks like it's going to provide more NFL value than fantasy value based on the fact that he brings that versatility to whatever NFL offense he's going to. Yet at the same time, we don't know if that's going to translate over to volume, which we know volume is what you chase in fantasy football. So Kadarius Toney, he looks like a poor man's Jalen Waddle, in my opinion. I think you have to have him in the top 10 just because if he gets that round one NFL draft capital, he's going to have immediate opportunity. He's going to be playing from day one of his rookie season. So yeah, he's coming in at 9, but I don't see much upside outside of that. Now, talk about someone who doesn't really have that much upside. Let's go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And it's kind of funny looking at the testing measurables for Amon-Ra St. Brown because someone tests that poorly and you have to sit here and you have to ask yourself, man, what are you doing? Why are you running the 40? Why are you participating in any of these drills? Literally, if you know that you're going to post a 40 that's this bad, if you know that you are this unathletic, literally don't do anything. Just say, hey, I'm sorry, my ankle's bothering me. My numbers are going to be skewed. We're not going to be participating in drills right now. Because Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, you look at the production and it's nice. I mean, he has a young breakout age. He has a decent production profile. And he was a player with a ton of pedigree. He was someone coming out of high school that dynasty owners, they already knew his name. And maybe that's just because we knew his brother, Equanimeous St. Brown, who came out of Notre Dame, who a lot of dynasty owners thought was going to be an impact player from year one. And he falls to the Green Bay Packers in day 3 of the NFL draft. And obviously, all hope for Equanimeous St. Brown is now lost. But in the case of Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, you have the pedigree, you have the production, you have the early breakout age. What are you doing coming out and showing everyone that you're the worst wide receiver athlete in the entire draft? Now, he is going to be a little bit more of a slot wide receiver. He is not necessarily going to be that guy that's playing on the outside, that's trying to win over the top. So you could make the argument that, hey, athleticism doesn't matter too much with Amon-Ra St. Brown. My problem here is I don't think he's going to get the draft capital. I mean, I would be very surprised if he's a top 60 NFL draft pick. I think best case scenario for Amon-Ra St. Brown is he's a round 3 NFL draft prospect. And if he falls to round 4 or later, at that point, it's going to be very hard for him to get on the field year one and even harder for him to make an impact when he does get on the field. Now, that's going to round out our top 10 rookie wide receiver rankings. We can talk about some guys that are just missing the cut right here. Dyami Brown is going to be the first player that didn't make the cut. And with Dyami Brown, I talked about this before, but in my opinion, he just looks like a worse James Washington. We mentioned James Washington earlier in this video. And no, I'm not some massive James Washington fanboy or anything, but in the case of Washington, I mean, Dyami Brown and him have very similar college prospect profiles, where both guys won at the college level by being that vertical field stretcher. Both guys were very productive and had an insane yards per target and insane yards per reception based on the role that they were playing in their NFL offenses. Now, both players also played with professional quarterbacks in their college offenses. Now, in the case of James Washington, it was Mason Rudolph that he was playing with. So nothing close to Sam Howell. Okay, Sam Howell right now is the UNC quarterback. He is going to be the first overall pick in next year's NFL draft. So Dyami Brown, it looks like he is a wide receiver that doesn't have enough athleticism to win over the top at the NFL level. And it looks like maybe he just benefited from going up against less athletic defensive backs with an extremely accurate deep ball passer in Sam Howell in college. I don't think that's going to translate for Dyami Brown at the NFL level. Okay, so our last wide receiver that we can talk about that just missed the cut is going to be Seth Williams, who actually has a fantastic prospect profile. The problem is you just look around NFL draft boards, you look around a ton of mock drafts, and very few of them have Seth Williams as a player that's going to be going off the board early. So it looks like Seth Williams right now is probably going to be falling to day 3 of the NFL draft, and that's just going to completely cut his hit rate to a point where we don't need to move him off the board, but we need to move him significantly down. Now, if Seth Williams can manage to go in the rounds, just say 2 to 3 area of the NFL draft, then he becomes extremely more appealing. But until we get that capital, I'm a little bit hesitant to rank him there. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Of course, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I will see y'all with the video tomorrow. I want to give a big thank you for everyone joining the flock. Devin Strom, Alejandro, Mark, Jared, Caleb, and IV of Lean, Randotron, Micah, Larry, and Tyler.